There are so many types of flour available today. Cake flour, all-purpose, self-rising, what should I use? Hey there, I'm Valerie from Sentimental Sweets by Val. I got the wild idea to restore an antique cookbook from 1932, and in the process, I had to do a lot of research on baking. So in this segment, I wanted to cover the 3 most common types of white flour that are used in cake and cookie baking, what to use when, and what you can and cannot substitute. So let's first talk briefly about the history of flour. Flour has been around for a very long time. There is evidence of grinding starchy plants to make a primitive form of flour as far back as 30,000 years ago. Now around 3000 BC, Egyptians began using hand sieves to separate the coarser parts of wheat from the finer grains, producing a rudimentary form of white flour. Now fast forward to more modern times. Up until about the late 19th century, white flour was considered a luxury item available only to royalty and the upper class due to the process being time-consuming and expensive. But in the 1860s, the steel roller mill was invented, which could efficiently separate the wheat kernels endosperm from its bran and germ, allowing for the mass production of white flour. The problem with this process was that it resulted in the loss of essential vitamins and minerals. So by the 1930s, studies reveal widespread vitamin and mineral deficiencies in the U.S. population. To combat this problem, by 1942, the U.S. mandated that all flour it produced be enriched. Now let's talk about the 3 most common types of white flour used in dessert baking. The first type of flour we're going to talk about is all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is just that, white flour that's been enriched. Nothing else is added. It might be bleached or unbleached. There's no added leavener in all-purpose flour, so you have to either add air or create air to get it to rise. We talked about this in an earlier segment on leaveners. Now the next type of flour that we're going to cover is self-rising flour. It was invented in the 1800s to simplify baking, especially for sailors. Self-rising flour already contains the raising agent, typically baking powder with a little salt, eliminating the need to add these ingredients separately. Now last but not least, which is cake flour, which is my favorite, sometimes referred to as soft flour. Cake flour has been available since around 1894. It's milled very fine and it's often bleached. Now, it's almost impossible to talk about flour without mentioning gluten, and I'm keeping this topic as simple as possible because I can already hear the eyes rolling. Gluten is a protein found in certain grains, including wheat, rye, and barley. Gluten is what gives wheat dough and batter their elastic qualities. I think of gluten as the spandex in your baked goods. The higher the protein content in the flour, the higher the potential for gluten development. Also, the more you mix or work your batter or dough, the more gluten you're going to potentially produce. This is why you don't want to overwork your pie crust or overmix your cake batter. Now to give you a perspective, bread flour, which is also known as strong or hard flour, has a protein content of about 12 to 14%. All-purpose flour has a protein content of about 9 to 12%, self-rising 8 to 9.5%, and cake flour has a protein content of about 7 to 9%. The more structure you need from a baked good, the higher your protein content needs to be. Now, let's get back to baking. What type of flour do you use for what? Well, all-purpose flour is pretty much just for what we're calling it. It's all-purpose. You can use it for most baked goods, cakes, cookies, quick breads, not yeast breads, pizza, pastry, noodles. All-purpose flour is going to be fine for most desserts. Just remember there's no leavener in there. Now self-rising flour does have a leavening agent as mentioned earlier. It works great for recipes that benefit from a tender, consistent crumb, such as pancakes, biscuits, muffins, and cupcakes. Cake flour is used for, well, cakes. The lower protein content will lead to less gluten development and a softer crumb, ideal for delicate bakes. Again, there is no leavener, so you're going to have to add one. Now, can you substitute cake flour for all-purpose flour or all-purpose flour for self-rising? Yes and no. You have to be mindful of what type of texture you're after. But you can tweak all-purpose flour and use it for almost any baked product. Again, disclaimer, Yeast bread is going to need bread flour. But if you have all-purpose flour, you're going to have a leavener. So that's where self-rising flour comes in for the convenience. The leavener is already in there. But if you need cake flour and you're out, it's all-purpose flour to the rescue. You're going to take 1 cup of AP flour. You're going to remove 2 teaspoons of it, put it in a bag, add 2 teaspoons of cake flour, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch back to your cake flour, and then you're going to sift it. Now you got cake flour. Now to sum it all up, all-purpose flour is just that. You can use it pretty much for everything. Pancakes, biscuits, muffins, cupcakes, whatever. Use cake flour just for cakes. And if you can only have one type of flour in your pantry, make it all-purpose. You can turn it into self-rising by adding a leavener, or you can turn it into cake flour by adding cornstarch. I hope this proves helpful in your baking. If you're into vintage baking, check out my website at Sentimental Sweets by Val, where you can get more baking tips, and also you can find that cookbook that I got the wild idea to restore. Until next time, happy baking.